And then, yeah, recording has started. So, okay, formally the class starts now. So we just repeat for the sake of the recording that we have had electronics courses in the past, but never a full semester was 4 credits course. Or earlier, of course, it used to be 3 credits, but full courses. But we never had a 3 credits electronics course earlier, except for a lab course. So why do we have an electronics course at all? There should be a justification for that. The first justification, there are several points. The more mundane ones, but perhaps quite important ones nonetheless, is those of you who give the NET exam, many of you will, of course, you will find that electronics actually occupies quite a large part of the NET syllabus, and usually the simplest questions come from electronics. So if you're not well versed in it, you lose out on a rather large chunk of easy marks. Of course, to qualify NET, you don't really have to be able to solve everything. So there have been cases of people who know no electronics whatsoever easily getting through NET. But electronics gives you an easy way to solve a few questions. That's one rather mundane and not so good a reason, but still it's an important reason. Another reason would be simply that if you're going to do experiments in particular, you have to be well versed in electronics to be able to do today's experiments. Of course, the kind of electronics we teach in this semester will just give a sort of stepping stone to that. The kind of electronics that your experimental equipment may use may very well be very specialized, but they will ultimately boil down to using the standard ideas which we'll talk about here. Now, it might seem that that means that only experimentalists need to know it, but that's not really true, because one problem with our country's theory teaching has always been that theoreticians end up with almost no clue about what experimentalists can do, and as a consequence, they make quite absurd theoretical claims. After all, a theory is only good if it can predict something. Then most theoreticians have not had any training in experiments, or very meager training in experiments, let's put it this way. They often make claims about their theories which can never be tested by the experimental setups available. And such theories are, of course, useless. The trouble is, if you don't know about experiments properly, you can't even do theory. So, electronics is an integral part of that, so that's why it's important. Point number two. Point number three, of course, you have to do it because it's in the syllabus. But that's not really a good argument here, because we are trying to argue why it should be in the syllabus. But there's another reason which I personally like a lot, although it's not a very formal reason. It's simply this. Most of the theory courses that you will have studied so far and will study in the future, most of them will deal with clear-cut, clean systems with very little approximation. Exact solutions will be stressed very often. Of course, that's not really true. You will soon see that in a quantum mechanics, for example, the approximate solutions play a very important role. Is the case in classical mechanics and so on. But usually, approximations are seen to be sort of an unclean thing by most students, for the simple reason that they are brought up on a dosage of exact solutions where you can write down 3 decimal places to the answer of the answer, and if you don't get the third decimal place right, you get docked marks and so on. So many people seem to have this idea that the science should be precise and no approximations are bad and so on. Frankly, that's not the way science works. Real science always works via controlled approximations. You can never explain the universe as it is if you try to explain everything. So what you do is you explain a part of it by making various approximations. So that's the way any science, especially physics, progresses. Unfortunately, at the undergraduate or even graduate level, most coursework don't really stress this much. Most coursework is about exact calculation, which is a flaw in the way we teach things too. At the same time, The reason why we do this is that there are so many beautiful results in exact calculations that it would be a crime not to teach them. But unfortunately, that often gives students a rather skewed idea, of the sense that not only students, I'm pretty sure many working physicists also have a skewed idea that approximations are bad and they're done only if there's no other way to do things and so on. Frankly, you have to realize that all of science has to be done through controlled approximation. Controlled is important. That is, you make an approximation, then you see whether should have an idea about how bad your approximation is or how good is it, depends on your point of view. And if it is not meeting the standards, especially the experimental standards that you have set for yourself, you have to perhaps recalculate the thing with less approximations thrown in or improved approximation. Now, electronics happens to be one topic where the subject is complicated enough to begin with so that you have to make approximations from the very beginning. So in a sense, I would say electronics is the only course that is taught at the undergraduate level, which essentially, okay, undergraduate means I'm an old-fashioned guy, so undergraduate essentially means the old BSc, which would be for you third year, right? So you are still undergraduates in that sense. Most undergraduate courses, the only undergraduate course which treats approximations as a way of life rather than as, say, something you do only if you can't do anything better, is an electronics course. So in that sense, electronics course is good training for learning about how science is really done. And of course, there's this all overarching reason that electronics is a fascinating subject. So if any of you are hobbyists, for example, you may have built a lot of circuits, but knowing what's going on behind the circuits may often be useful, both for building the circuits, also for really understanding what you're doing. So at this stage, let me just pause and ask you, do you have any questions about this? Okay, this was just a sort of polemic, so I'm not sure anybody should have a question about this. You may, of course, not agree with what I'm saying, but that's all right. But I've given you 4 reasons. I lost count. I guess it was 4. I've given you 4 reasons why electronics is important and should be studied, and even if only one of them were correct, you would have to study for that reason. Okay. Apart from, of course, the overarching reason that is in the syllabus, and you get marks for it. Now, talking about marks, let's say something about how we plan to grade this course. Now, these plans are all fluid, depends entirely on how the situation unfolds, as you all know. So, as of now, the Senate decision is that 60% of the course will be internal marking, and 40% will be the NSEM if it can be held. And that's a big if. Okay. If things improve to the extent that people can be brought to the campus for their entrance exam, then perhaps, then of course the 40% will work. Okay. However, given that there's every chance that that might not happen, that is, it may not be deemed safe enough to bring everybody back to campus to give the exam, we might have to do this, that we will have an entrance exam which is online, but then the online exam weightage will be less. How much less? That's not really sure at this stage, but that depends essentially on the circumstances. But it might even be 20% for the entrance via Viva or something, and 80% for the intern. Now, how do we grade the intern? Well, basically, this 1 hour a week contact hour that we will have regular assessments throughout the semester. That might mean, of course, I can't simply take a Viva for every participant every week. That would mean that there will be no discussion at all. However, at random, we will pick on somebody and ask questions. There, of course, will be assignments. I will try to make the assignments reasonably regular. not very many questions, but 2 or 3 questions every week to be solved. So we will discuss them in the next discussion session. We will also perhaps take vivas directly related to them and so on. So that will be bulk of your score. Okay. So that is roughly the way it has been decided right now. So these once a week classes so far as of now will be very important in the sense that they will contribute a lot to your grading. Assignment will be a large part, but this will also be a large part. Okay. Now, it's of course I will take class tests from time to time without warning because frankly there's no point in giving a warning about the kind of say 10 minutes or 20 minutes classes I'm going to take. Now you might of course say that on that day you were absent. Fine, I will if I take n class tests, I will grade n minus 2. I will take the best n minus 2. That means you are allowed to miss 2 of the classes because of various reasons. But any more, frankly, nothing much can be done about it, then you lose marks. Okay. So that's the way I thought we will proceed. Of course, depending on the situation, things may change, but this is the decision as of now. Okay. So any questions about that? Of course, if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask. If not, everybody seems to be well muted. I hope everybody is still there and they have not gone to sleep. Since you're not even responding to that, okay, 2 people are here apparently seeing. Okay. So today's class, of course, as I said, is more or less an exploratory class. I'm done with the explanations that I had to give you. That is, why electronics and how do we grade. We will make it more detailed later. And one thing is this, I will upload videos on the other 2 days, hopefully before the scheduled class time. You of course don't have to go and watch the videos exactly on the scheduled class time. However, it might be a good idea to get into the habit of doing that because otherwise it might simply be that you will leave too much undone and you will have too little time at other times. So, although of course since I'm going to upload those videos on YouTube, you can definitely watch them anytime you want. But if you have any questions about what is being talked about there, and these are very important because if you don't have questions, I definitely will. And that of course will go into your score. If you have any questions, you are definitely supposed to ask them in the next discussion hour or on a subsequent discussion hour. But it will be much more convenient for everybody that if you were to ask those questions on a discussion forum which I will set up on Wheeler. That way everybody gets to know, see your question and everybody can benefit from this. So one thing I have decided that I will not do, which is anybody uses Messenger or a personal mail to write me a question on the topic, I will simply not answer. There is a big reason for that. The reason is that question is not only beneficial for you, the answer to the question may be beneficial to everybody in the class. Even those who haven't realized that there is a question. Of course, many people don't want to ask questions directly because it seems that other people will think that they are being stupid. They didn't understand it. Let me tell you, most people, if you have a question, most of your class will also have a question. If not, it might simply mean that they have not even thought about it. Of course, there's a saying that no question is stupid, only all questions are intelligent. That's really wrong. There are stupid questions, but it's unlikely that you will ask a stupid question. More importantly, even if you ask a stupid question, it's no big deal. Everybody has a right to be stupid once or twice, and not even once or twice, several times. So, if you have questions, ask in the discussion forum. I will check the discussion forum and answer those questions first, if they are relevant. Sometimes, of course, the question might be not about what we are talking about right now. But if we are talking about that and there's a genuine question, I'm definitely going to discuss that in the next discussion hour first. Of course, you can directly ask the question during the discussion hour as well. But if you give me a heads up as to what you are, where you think my explanation has not worked, or where do you think if additional explanation is necessary, it may make it easier for me to answer. Or I may come prepared with other material which may help you understand better. So asking question ahead of time may be useful. But I'm not discouraging you from those of you who have my Facebook ID from using Messenger or something for other questions, for personal questions or whatever. But any question to do with the course, please don't ask personally, because simply because answers to those questions should benefit everybody, not just you. Okay, so that's about it. But now I need to know what exactly is your status. So can we answer a backmath question on the wheel? Of course you can. I would do it much better if you answered it yourself. And frankly, the discussion forum is meant for a discussion, right? You can answer each other's questions. You can have a discussion. Sometimes the answers may not even be right or may not be complete. Then other people may step in, saying, "No, no, no, this is not perfect. There is something more to it." That's of course fine. Look, uh, unfortunately, we are in a situation where you don't meet each other face to face. But let me tell you one thing: discussion among friends is the best way to learn about a topic. Okay? A teacher saying something from up above and teaching about something is actually not really the best mode of learning. The teacher can only tell you what to learn. You have to learn it yourself, and one of the best ways to learn it yourself is try to teach your friends. Unfortunately, you can't do it face to face now, but you can definitely do it on a discussion forum. There, in fact, are several models of such learning where teachers, in fact, take a back seat and the students teach each other and so on. We are not being that radical here, but on the discussion forum, if you want to discuss, go ahead and do it. Of course, try all those standard rules about being civil and not calling each other idiots, etc. Those apply. The only person whom you can call an idiot on a discussion forum is the teacher. Don't call your friends idiot. At least not on the discussion forum. You can do that if you do that elsewhere. Okay. So now I want to know from you what your current situation is as far as knowledge about the subject matter is concerned. Because unlike our childhood, nowadays, at least in the 12th, there is quite a bit of electronic stuck in. Although, depending on the board, it could be a very, very perfunctory glance or a very detailed look. So let me list a few topics and let me ask you how many of you already know about these things. So first, the first part of the course is circuit analysis. That's not electronics, that's really electricity, but it's essential in order to be able to go through the rest of it. So, okay, I would like to ask you how many of you know about Kirchhoff's laws? That should be, or rather, how many of you don't know about Kirchhoff's laws? Kirchhoff's laws, to be more precise about their pronunciation, but everybody calls them Kirchhoff's laws. So, how many do not know Kirchhoff's laws? If you don't, please speak up. I'm assuming everybody does, or unless unmuting may take too long or typing takes too long. Okay, Kirchhoff's laws, everybody, I'm reasonably sure everybody has at least seen. I will give a recap of that, of course, but that way I at least know that this is a known subtopic. Okay, what about Maxwell's loop method or mesh method? Okay, in case, let me just do one thing. Let me start a presentation. I don't have a presentation today. But I will just show you some things directly. Okay, Kirchhoff, KCL, KVL, current and voltage laws. I hope you can see this. Unfortunately, now you have to unmute and say, because as long as I'm presenting something else, I can't really see the chat box. So KCL, KVL, Kirchhoff's laws, I think is known to everybody. I hope this is visible. And then
Yes, sir.
Maxwell's mesh method. I already have seen somebody chat on the chat box saying no. Okay, fine. This is. But by the way, here let me reverse the question. Mesh method, how many of you know? Because Kirchhoff's laws, I'm pretty sure. Okay, Anubhav Nandi says I know. Okay, but I'm pretty sure most may not. Because Maxwell's mesh method and Norton's nodal method, these are topics which are comparatively new. Okay, some people know, of course, but I guess it would be safe to assume that while Kirchhoff's laws are known to almost everybody, at least in some form or the other, these two special versions of that, uh, Maxwell's mesh method and Norton's nodal method, are not that well known. Okay, so we have to. These are actually variants of Kirchhoff's law, special variants, special ways of applying them, but you may not have learned about them. That's fine. Okay. Then comes some other specialized methods. Like the star delta transform. Some people may know about this, I guess. But again, I'm going to discuss what this is when we need it. Now, more specialized things which will be useful for us in the electronics course are things called Thevenin's theorem and Norton's theorem. And even more, uh, so so these theorems. Okay, somebody has written. Okay, Thevenin's theorem is known to us, but not Norton. Did you do a Thevenin's theorem experiment, by the way, in the second year? Is it still there in the lab? I don't know, but is it still there? I don't think it is. Okay, Thevenin's theorem may be known. Not Norton. Norton and Thevenin are sort of uh, two sides of the same coin. Okay, fine. So I guess, and the last few that I wrote down, Z parameter is Thevenin's theorem related to finding equivalent resistance. Partly. Partly it is, but not. Okay, fine. So I guess the consensus is KCL, KVL is more or less well known. I will give a brief recap to that in the next video, but it's assume that is well known. The others, not so much. Some of you may know it, but most of you don't. Fine. So our first couple of weeks or 3 weeks will be essentially dedicated to these topics. Uh, of These are specialized topics in circuit analysis which are useful when we go on to study complicated stuff. And Z parameter equivalent, Y parameter equivalent, I'm not sure. I'm reasonably sure most of you don't know. Because those are more specialized things which are used only for very rather special purpose, including applications in electronics. Okay, fine. And the other important thing that I really need to know about your background is this. I'm assuming my copy is visible, hopefully. So how many of you know these things? For complex or complex numbers in the notion of impedance as a complex number, in particular something like if somebody says j omega L or 1 by j omega C, are these familiar concepts? Good. You do it in, some of you did it in +2, not always, and not everybody has done it in +2. But you all know what the meaning of these complex numbers here are, I hope. Again, I will give a brief recap of this, but I'm pretty sure most of you know what this is all about. So we can then directly go on to talking about more complicated AC circuits and so on. And one more thing, this one I'm pretty sure everybody knows. If I draw a circuit which looks like this, some battery here with a key. I hope everybody knows what this circuit is, right? Okay. Anubhav Nandi has misspelled the name, but anyway. Whetstone means something else actually, but this is V-stone. You can't see my screen. Okay, somebody can't see my screen. Is that the case for everybody? You can't see my screen, please speak up. Unmute yourself and say that.
Sir, I
Can you
can't
see the
see.
page? So have you pinned somebody else? Or maybe my face?
Yeah, yes, sir.
What are you seeing? Are you seeing my face?
Yes, sir.
That means you have pinned my face. Unpin it.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay. If you don't pin it, you are going to see the presentation. Hopefully. And that's a general rule. Whenever you're in Google Meet, if you're not seeing somebody presenting, almost certainly it's because you have pinned that person's face. Or somebody else. You get to see only that person. Okay, so everybody knows what a Wheatstone bridge is, but does anybody know what this is? Or have you seen bridges which look like this? So the bridge that I showed a while ago. Okay, that's an AC bridge. The basic idea is very similar to the Wheatstone bridge in a way. Okay, but we will need to discuss this a bit because these are going to be pretty handy when we come to important circuits. Okay, so that's sort of the background so far. But now, let me just ask you a quiz question. This one doesn't carry any marks, but I'm pretty sure most of you know how to do this. Suppose I So this is a ladder kind of circuit. Okay, let's show you the circuit now. I hope you can all see the circuit properly. And despite my bad handwriting, these are R2R, R2R, R2R resistances in a ladder, which keeps on going, not forever. It's terminated by ultimately putting in, this was an R2R at the end, after a lot of similar things, and then you finally put in X. Okay. Can you figure out what is the equivalent resistance looking in from these two terminals? So infinite, let me make a comment here. This is not an infinite circuit, by the way. If this had been an infinite circuit, most of you know how to work out the answer. For a finite circuit, that is, there are n such. So this is 1, 2, 3. You can see 4 of such cells, but maybe there are n cells. The dot dot dots in between. I hope the dot dot dots are visible here. They say that there are more such cells in between, and ultimately you have terminated with an X. And you still figure out the equivalent resistance. What is the okay here? Does it mean you can't now that you know it's a finite circuit, or you still can? Okay, unfortunately I have to switch back and forth between this one. Let's see, I will just make it a bit smaller. Does X have a resistance? Yes, it does. So I think I can is great. That's of course it will usually depend on the number of cells, number of R2Rs you have, N. Okay, the question I have for you is, can you figure out when, for what value of X, will this be independent of N, the number of cells? How much should I put in as X so that the result is independent of N? So you may not be able to answer right now. 2R. Okay, why do you say 2R? Paul? Okay, there are R or 2R going in. Yeah.
So maybe if we put X equals 2R, first two 2Rs are in parallel, which becomes R circuit. Then again in R plus R, the series circuit that makes 2R. Then again it's in parallel with the next circuit, which makes it R, and so on.
Great. So then the overall thing will be, in the end, what will be the answer?
So it makes it 2R.
What's the final answer? What is the equivalent resistance? The value which is independent of N.
So 2R?
The argument is perfect. Exactly. It's going to be 2R.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But this one was easy because I gave you R and 2R. If I give you some other value, say R and NR, let's say, it would be slightly more complicated to calculate. But the basic idea is simple. If you terminate this infinite ladder with the equivalent resistance to the infinite circuit, which you can easily figure out, very easy to see, it doesn't matter how many cells you have. In this particular case, the equivalent, the equivalent resistance of the infinite ladder is 2R. And you terminate it by 2R, it's going to be just as if you had an, it will essentially mean that effectively you can think of this X here as an infinitely long R2R ladder. So no matter how many N's you have here, you'll end up with infinitely many R2R cells effectively. So the result will be independent of your value of N, the number of cells. So in general, if I have R1 and R2 and ladder made out of that, then this X to make this independent, if the equivalent resistance independent of the number of cells, X has to be the equivalent resistance for the infinite ladder. Fine, but let me just pose a question for you. This is something which is going to be a sort of homework. Suppose you had a ladder made out of something like this. And let's say this is an infinite ladder. Now you should be able to calculate the impedance for this, right? What is the equivalent impedance for this thing? You should be able to calculate. If you say the impedance is, say, Z infinity, then all of you know this, so I'm just repeating this so that I can continue the argument. You can say that all of these LCs after the initial LC, that's also an infinite ladder which is equivalent because it's only one cell less, right? But one less than infinity is still infinity. So it has to be Z infinity. So the argument goes that the effective resistance for this 1L, 1C in parallel with Z infinity, C and Z infinity in parallel in series with L, that must be the same as Z infinity, right? This is the kind of argument you use all the time for the resistance ladders. You can also use it for impedance and capacitance ladders. Of course, here the impedance is going to depend on the frequency, right? Because this L has a Z which is j omega L. C has a impedance which is 1 by j omega C. And using that and using standard series parallel calculations, you should be able to find out what Z infinity is. When with the quadratic equation, you solve it, you find out Z infinity. So this is your homework for the next week. Find out Z infinity as a function of omega and comment on whether you see anything strange in your answer. Okay? So there are two parts to this. One is find out what Z infinity is, a simple thing. Find out this is going to give you a quadratic equation. And if it is a quadratic equation, it should have two roots, one of which will make sense, the other one will not. So it's a bit that happens with resistance ladders as well. But with resistance ladders, usually what happens is one of them is going to be a positive number, the other one is going to be a negative number, and since you know resistance cannot be negative, you can safely choose the positive answer. Here, on the other hand, you may not have that luxury, so you have to be careful in choosing which one of the two routes you take. And there will be something strange about the answer. For not always, but for a range of omega values, you will see something strange about your answer. You should be able to notice that it's strange. Okay? So, I want you to comment on that. So, I will of course write down this problem and set it up in VLearn and give you a link where you can upload your assignment. But for the first week, this is more of a puzzle. But the important thing is if you can spot what is strange about the answer, that's one important thing. But the other important thing is, once you spot that there is something strange about the answer, what can you infer from there, what can you discuss about that is actually quite important. So, Fazal has already written down an answer, which is fine. The question, Banali, is this. If you take this infinite ladder made out of L and C, L and C, L and C going on for till infinity, you can calculate its effective impedance, the so-called Z infinity. I've just outlined how to calculate this. I'm pretty sure all of you know how to calculate this. I just wanted to make sure that everybody is following the same method. And then what you do is you write down the formula which comes out, equation which comes out of the fact that L and C with the Z infinity stuck here must be equivalent to Z infinity. So you should get a quadratic equation out of this. You should be able to solve for Z infinity. Further has already given us an answer. Looks reasonably okay to me. I'm not sure whether all the factors are correct. But if you can see the answer in the chat box, you should be able to immediately say that there is something wrong or something should be wrongish about the answer. That's for some values of omega. So there are two questions. One is the Z infinity, which is pretty straightforward. Although figuring out which sign to take is not that straightforward. So when you write down your answer, I want you to give a proper argument as to why you are choosing this particular route. Aniruddha asked, there is a possibility that the value becomes complex. Yes, the value was purely imaginary to begin with, but the solution may become complex. And why is that a problem? Or how can that happen? What does it mean physically if it's becoming complex? These are questions I want you to discuss. So this is a sort of open-ended question. The simple, straightforward question is find out Z infinity. That straightforward is a solution of a quadratic equation. I'm pretty sure everybody can do that. Of course, I'm still saying that figuring out which of the routes to take may be a bit of an issue. But as has been rightly pointed out, for a large enough omega, or a small enough omega, depending on which way you're looking at, you may run into an unusual kind of answer. But why is it unusual? It's something you have to figure out. What's wrong or what's unusual about the answer? And what do you think the resolution is? Okay? So this can be answered at many different levels, and many very important people have said many interesting things about this. So your answers may not really become a purely inductive circuit. Well, look, will it? The answer is no. But if you did, that would not be that much of a surprise. The surprise is elsewhere. I will ask you to think about it and not answer right now. This is a rather deep question in the long run. And funnily enough, for a subject which is as mundane as electronics, this question has deep mathematical connotations as well. There would be Anubhav Nandi is right, but the question is how will that happen? He's saying there would be power dissipation due to the real part of the impedance, which is fine, but none of the circuit elements are dissipated. So how can that happen is an important question. And depending on how you look at it, there may be physical answers to this question, there may be mathematical answers. This is really a non-trivial question, the explanation. Okay, so think about it. This is one question where I'm not sure everybody is going to come up with the same answer, because there are different ways of answering this. And not all answers are equally correct. But there are plenty of wrong answers which if you go to the internet, I deliberately chosen this question as one because they should also warn you about the pitfalls of using the internet and Google search to answer your question. Because this is one question for which you can find all kinds of answers on the internet. Some very profound, some simply idiotic. And unfortunately, some of the very often, some very important people are cited even for the idiotic question. So, or even for the idiotic answer. So, I will let you think on your own, decide which one of the explanations. If you decide to Google it, fine, but then you should be able to sort out the idiotic answer from the correct one. which, by the way, is very difficult. It's much easier to think it out yourself. So this is more of a challenge kind of problem, not really for grading so much, but I would like you to figure this out simply because it's an interesting question. Should teach you a lot about various topics, including convergence in mathematical parlance or other topics as well. Okay, so that's it for today. By the time the next class comes around, which is I guess Wednesday, right? Or Thursday? When is it? When is your next class schedule? It's Wednesday, right? Or do you not know the schedule? I don't mean the Google Meet. I mean class in your time. You have seen your timetable, right? Have you? Wednesday. Okay, by the time Wednesday comes along, you will have your first video uploaded on YouTube. I would urge you, if not at that time slot, at least don't spend too much time before you watch it, because you will otherwise end up with a huge backlog of things to watch and discuss. Any questions? Send it to me. By the way, this particular course was also supposed to have a lab demonstration component, if not an actual lab component, when it was originally designed. The trouble is I can't do that in my home, not with actual equipment. I don't have any around here. But what I will try to do is sort of substitute computation or say simple programs to demonstrate what circuits should do, which means that whatever you learned or did not learn in the last semester will also come in handy. So time to time there will be programming exercises as well related to electronic problems that I will do. So I've come to the end of today's class. If you have any questions, please ask now. If not, we can sign off for today. Okay, I guess nobody is in the mood to ask any questions right now. It's fine. So, stay safe till we meet again, which is next Monday. And once again, please watch the videos on time and put up your discussion questions on the forum. Okay, bye for now. You can log out now. Let me just do the other stuff like stop the recording and so on.